You bet.
All right, we're talking to Kevin McNew with Cash Grain Bids. And Kevin, you're seeing some creep up in the barge rates the last week or so. What's really bringing that on, and how severe is it?
Well, this time of year we normally see barge rates start to inch up a little bit, and in the last week we've seen a 6 to 9 cent increase in the cost of moving barges down the river, especially along the Illinois and Mississippi River waterways. The Ohio River waterway has been pretty immune from the barge cost going up, so we're seeing basis levels in the Illinois Mississippi rivers off about a nickel to 10 cents in some cases, where the Ohio rivers basically seen basis levels pretty stable. So a lot of this is just sort of the normal seasonal pattern. We've seen more traffic come along in terms of more grain movement down the river. And again, a lot of this is just along the normal seasonal lines that we normally expect this time of year.
Okay, what advice are you giving farmers then to deal with this situation? Is this anything they can do about it?
Certainly, this time of year normally is a time to see fairly flat basis improvements. So, those who have unpriced grain or have hitched to arrive contracts, the carry in the market is starting to shrink. The chances of substantial basis improvements seem pretty slim at this point in time. So if you have basis risk at your disposal, it's probably pretty good time to get serious about looking at locking it in.
Slim chance of improvement, but probably this time of year you might even see some more deterioration, right? That's
correct. So, with barge rates going up, and we would expect them to keep creeping up in the next week or so, it's pretty likely, especially those markets that are within 100 or 200 miles of the river, should start to see some basis levels start to soften and come down a little bit.
What about speaking of the Mississippi Basin and everything that flows through there, pretty big eye on the Gulf right now with the oil slick down there. Is that impacting the grain trade yet?
Yeah, well, I think certainly traders are watching it. Certainly the futures market today was a little nervous about what's going on in the Gulf. And, from a trade standpoint, we haven't seen any sort of trade disruptions. I think grain flows are still pretty much as business as usual. But, time will tell what the impact is going to be. I've read reports that, if it's going to impact the river system, and grain traffic, it's probably going to happen in the next 2 or 3 days, that the oil might creep its way into the mouth of the Mississippi, where a lot of these vessels are trying to leave port. So, the next 2 days might be fairly critical, and potentially have an impact of shutting down grain flows out of the U.S.
They'll actually shut it down?
Well, out of the Gulf, I think that's a definite possibility. And we know half of our grain in the U.S. leaves out of the Gulf, out of the Gulf port. So, if that gets shut down even for just a couple of days, I think it can have a fairly important impact on grain markets.
So even if it's a couple of days, but I mean, from what you're hearing and seeing in the trade, this doesn't sound like it's a long or a short-term solution to the problem.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot of unknowns in this whole issue. We still have a lot of oil spilling out into the Gulf, 200,000 gallons a day or whatever the number is, and they still can't contain it. So, I think it's a little premature to try and speculate what the impact's going to be on grain business. But, I think the risk to the producer is that this has the potential to certainly sink basis levels and probably sink some futures prices as well. So I think farmers have a little bit of risk right here if they don't have their grain priced.
So get it priced now?
Well, if I'm a betting man, that's where I'd be trying to lay the odds, is that, this is a risk that I think is fairly substantial, and the markets have very little incentive, I think, to go higher. Weather conditions are really conducive for planting 010 corn and soybeans, and so I think the market will sense a fairly bearish outcome of this oil issue and potentially send markets lower.
Okay. Kevin, just real quick, for people who may not be aware of cash grain bids, what can you guys do to help farmers through this?
Well, we try and help them figure out where they should be going with their grain, and we collect over 50,000 prices every day. from 4,000 different grain buyers, and our goal is to help the producer find the best marketing opportunities in their local market. So whether they need to go 40 miles down the road to the river terminal or 30 miles the other way to an ethanol plant, we give them that answer every day in our Optimizer product.
Okay, and they can get the prices directly on AgWeb and get some more detailed information at cashgrainbeds.com.
That's correct.
All right, that's great. Kevin McNew with Cash Grain Beds. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, Greg.